Welcome to the Monessen Historical Museum. It is operated by the Greater Monessen Historical Society. Right now we're in the first floor of the museum, and here we house rotating exhibits that tell the story of the many ethnic groups that came to Monessen and settled here around the turn of the century in the early 1900s. We also often tell the story about the history of Monessen and its industrial past. And today, what we are going to have is a guest with us who is going to tell us about the current exhibit. And that is the exhibit of the Syrians who came to Monessen to find a better life. Again, that was beginning at the early part of the 20th century. Our guest today is George Essey. He is a leader in the Syrian American community, and he was born and raised in Monessen. Welcome, George. We're going to start today by looking at a map of Syria to make sure you understand exactly where Syria is located. All right, George, we're going to walk down to the map.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to being here. Syria, it's at the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea. It is surrounded by Turkey on the north, Iraq on the east, Jordan and Israel on the south, and on the southwest by the country of Lebanon. Syria itself is a large country. Right now it's in the midst of, I don't know if you want to call it a historical war that's been going on since before Christ. But most of the people from our area came from this area called Hims. Actually it's H-O-M-S, and we call it Homs, H-O-M-S, Homs. Quite a few people are in from, I can't know, here's the, this is like the county, and this is the city, and it's a very large city, and they're in the midst of this civil war that's going on in Syria at the present time. I had an email from a cousin, and he says the area they're in has not been harmed yet, but all around them they've been bombed and whatever and so forth. Syria is the time before Christ. Lebanon used to be a part of Syria, and back in the 1940s that's when it became its own country. So it's...
Okay, George. All right, now we'll move down to where we'll see the early leaders in the early history.
Back in the early days, they had the sultans and the kings, or whatever you want to call them out there, and they ruled not for a long period of time. Quite a few of them was short term, either through abdication or kicked out of office or assassinations. Most of them, King Faisal is probably one of the best known kings of Syria. The present president of Syria is Hafez Assad Hafez, whichever. From the story I get, the people in Syria love this man. They say there's nothing wrong with him. It's just that the nations are against him, and they're the ones that's causing all the trouble in Syria. It might sound like a political statement I'm making, but I think if they left Syria alone, they'd probably be all right now. But they all these people, like I say, this is, I won't even try to say that name. Mehmed. This is King Faisal I, and King Faisal I, and another King Faisal. They were all soldiers to begin with, and then they took over. They had their own revolts that took over the country of Syria, and the next guy would have a revolt and take over the country of Syria at that time too.
We have some artifacts that were brought back by some of the families from Monessen who traveled back to Syria. We have a fez there.
This is the fez. Most of the men wear these on top of their head. These are brass camel plates. I think almost every Syrian home you go into, they'll have one or two brass camels in their collection. This is another head covering they have, and this one is a camel made of Pennsylvania coal. I've never seen one other than this one right here, and very, very detailed with the way they cut it out.
And then we have a headdress here.
This is a headdress. They wore this in the deserts and so forth to keep the sun from burning them up and so forth. They usually had white or light-colored head scarves and all to beat off the heat. The black would retain the heat, and they would be in bad shape. This is a keftan that they would be wearing, and they're very articulate with their handiwork and sewing it up and all. And 90% of this stuff is usually handmade.
Yeah. And here's a lovely scarf.
Yeah,
this would be a woman's outfit.
Right. They didn't have the factories like we do here. These are all made by hand. We were talking about the other day, my mother, on her doilies and so forth, she was semi-blind. One eye was no good, the other eye. But she would sit and make her doilies without looking. And she says that's the art they learn
over there. A lot
of
practice.
Yeah. They just sit there and they're 1, 2, 1, 2, whatever, and then next thing you know, she has a big doily and everything else.
Okay, throughout the exhibit, we're going to show different artifacts and things that have been brought back. But right now, we're going to talk about one of the families that immigrated from Syria, and that is George's family. His family comes first here. And George, tell us about some of the things that are pictured here.
My dad came to this country in 1920. The only thing I have on him is a certification that he applied for citizenship. That's what this is, and I mean, you got to be up real close to read what's on it and so forth. Declaration of intention to become a citizen of the United States of America. My mother came in 1928 aboard the SS Sanaa, and she came from a port in France. They left Beirut, came to France, and then France to America. This is the manifest from the ship she came on. This is her passport, her and my brother Sam, 1928. He was born in Syria, and the day they baptized my brother Sam, the next day is when my dad left for Syria. So he didn't see Sammy from age 2 months until he was 8 years old.
Now here are some nice photographs of your family.
This picture is taken in Syria. This is my
point out your dad, your
grandfather.
granddad.
I'm one of the unfortunates. I never met any of my grandparents, but that's the only picture I have of my grandpa. The odd thing about Syria names, the family names, you took your father's last name, which became your first name. So try to track down your family history is a real mess, because it's not Essey family. Go back and find the Essey family. My dad, this was Essey Tanus Essey, and then my dad became Esper Essey, and it's just confusing as all. This is my parents, their 50th anniversary. They lived in Monessen, 1920 on. My dad did, my mother from 1928. These are the family trees and a little history on the Essey family. And this is my dad, brothers, and my mother back in the 1931 season. We also have here a Demitasse cups with the coffee pot. Demitasse coffee, they drank the Turkish coffee in there, and if you never drank Turkish coffee, it's very thick.
Strong. Yes.
Very strong. The old saying, it'll put hair on your chest.
Okay, we have a few carved boxes here, also brought back from people traveling to Syria.
This one here is a chocolate box, Zen Baraki. I was practicing that name a little while ago, Zen Baraki. And this is a wood inlay box. It's a musical jewelry box. And the song it plays is Miserlou. I think everybody knows that that particular song. This particular display here is Syrian businesses in Monessen, and the actually it's from Edmund Domit's jewelry store. Edmund Domit brought him down, and he had a jewelry store down at 459 Donner Avenue, and then he moved up here, I believe, to 500 Donner Avenue, and then he sold out, went to Charleroi, and he was a very well-known businessman in Monessen. This was the second store he had, and his dad and mother lived upstairs in the old First Federal Building, which is stayed on the corner of 6th and Schoonamaker.
Yes.
Mr. Domit was not a doctor, but I'll give you a story about Mr. Domet. I fell down up on our hill, broke my wrist, sprained it real bad. And my dad says, okay, we're going down to see, can't think his name. Actually, we're going down to see Mr. Domet. So we climbed all these steps. And he says, okay, son, sit down. And there's about 5 Syrian guys there, and they're playing cards. And he makes an egg mixture with flour and everything else, and he puts it on my hand. He says, okay, don't move. So I sat there while they played cards. 20 minutes later, he says, okay, pick your hand up. So I picked it up. He says, can you bend it? I says, no. He says, go home.
Oh, that was your cast.
That was my cast. And within 4 days, it went down. He cut it off. Wrist was all healed.
It was fine.
So there's
Yes,
no big doctors.
the original Domet who came from Syria was Alex.
Yeah.
And he built the first federal
Building.
We call it First Federal
Yeah.
because there was a bank there for
Right.
a long time. But he was the one who was responsible for building it.
Right.
Anyway, he was an active leader in the community, and he owned a let's call it a dry goods store. It just sold many, many things. And here's one of the advertisements
Right.
of when he was in business. And then Edmund, and here is Edmund and his brother Louis. And Edmund is the young one there. And he then went on to become very active in southwestern Pennsylvania in the jewelry business.
Right.
Okay, next we're going to show a few more items that came from Syria. We have some musical instruments. George, are you familiar with these
Yes, I
instruments?
am.
Well, explain them to us.
When we would have what we called huffleys. Huffley is it's another word for a party or get together, banquet, whatever. And they would have a trio or 4 or 5 men, women. The women usually were the singers, and the men. This is a oud, O-U-D, and 2, 4, 6. I think it was about 12 strings on that, and they would just play that like, I mean, it was nothing to them. And you would look in amazement to them. The second guy would have the brass drum. He held it under his arm, and he would, we call it the durbaki. He would just work his fingers on that so fast you wouldn't know what's what. And the third guy would take the tambourine, and all he'd do is hit his leg and shake it up in the air and like that and so forth. And they would play that, they would go 2-3 hours, take about a 10-minute break and go another 2-3 hours. And as long as you kept them supplied with the arak, the Syrian or Greek whiskey or Turkish
Oh, I
whiskey,
see.
and they were
party
happy.
kept on.
They were very happy as long as you
Party.
kept them. It was same as today. You keep feeding them beer or whatever, they'll play all night long. And they would play songs that you can just listen to, and they would play songs that do the dubki, which is a line dance, and they always had the front person that would do the fancy stepping and turning around and swinging a hanky around the air and all.
Oh.
They would take the hanky and tie a knot at the end, and that way they flung a hanky all around it.
Well, this is a good time to show photos and talk about the Syrian picnics.
Very good. Our Syrian picnics, we've had them in this valley, as long as I can remember, and then we finally quit having them because of the cost of foods and the cost of the grounds and the loss of people. As our generation became older, they couldn't do the work they did while they were younger. And the younger people didn't want to take over the jobs that the older women did. They would spend weeks and weeks preparing the food. They would have the kibbe and the grape leaves and the meat pies and you name it. And then they would get the lamb meat, and they would cut the lamb meat into small pieces and put them on skewers and all that. And we just didn't get the people to work all these picnics. We've had picnics. The last picnic we had was up at our church hall. We had outdoor cooking, but the picnic was inside. And before there was the North Charleroy Recreation Parks. We had them at Kozar's Park in West Newton, the Croatian Park out by the old Victoria coal mine, Zajac Park up on top of the hill in Monessen, One place down in Ford Township, I have no idea what the name of the place is, but it was a picnic grove they had down there. And we would get people from out of state, in-state, all over. And we would have anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5, maybe 700 people at a time at these picnics. They would have dancing. You can see usually the band would bring in a dancer with them. They would do the old Syrian belly dance. And that was the big take of the day. And that's when all the men would quit playing cards or boozing, and they would line up and they'd go, and they would throw money out.
Oh,
They would throw. They wouldn't put the money in the belt or whatever she had. They would throw the money on the floor, and then there'd be another lady to walk around and pick up the money. And then there'd be another person from the church following that lady and make sure the church got the money. And the women did all the preparation of the food. The guys and the women would serve. This is the line dance I was telling you about.
This one over here.
The duck beat. It's the same as the Greek dance.
Like a Greek line
Right,
dance.
yeah. Ours is just a little bit different, just a little in the step movement and so forth. And it was always a good time, a very good time that everybody had at these picnics and so forth. And like I say, they finally did away with it because of cost and lack of people. We just didn't have the people to work the picnics anymore.
This year, the St. Michael's Orthodox Church is celebrating its 100th anniversary in Monessen. So I know you've been active in the church and the cantor since what year? You've been cantor?
1960s.
In the 1960s,
Yeah.
so you're well versed on the church. So
Right.
tell us a little bit about the background and about the centennial that has been celebrated really since last fall.
That's right.
It's been going on.
Right. Our church, the stone at the church says 1914. Bishop Basil wrote to us when he was in the headquarters. He wrote and says, Georgie, the start of your church is 1913, not 1914. He says you were given approval for it in 1913, so that's basically the start of the St. Michael's Church in Monessen. And so in 1986, we did not celebrate the 75th or 76th anniversary. We just moved it up 1 year, so 1 year we missed out. But this past year, we celebrated our 100th year in Monessen. We had our Bishop Thomas come in. He's our local bishop that represents our area. Bishop Basil, who is the bishop of in Kansas, the Western Archdiocese. He's a native son from our church. He came in, and so with 2 bishops, we had one tremendous weekend there. Plus the fact, one picture here, Bishop Basil, they had sort of a small class reunion. Bishop Basil and the mayor of Monessen at that time, Mary Jo Smith, Father Andy George, who is a Greek Orthodox priest out of Rhode Island, Candy, who also works down here,
Yes.
and Johnny Harhai, who was the city administrator at that time. They all graduated in 1960.
66, I think.
66.
Yeah, I think it's 66.
66, right. So they had their Bishop Basil was the main speaker. We were given proclamations from the state, from the county, and from the national, from D.C. We had tremendous turnout, and it was one big glorious weekend where we had letters and everything from people from all over the United States congratulating us on that particular anniversary.
We have some items from the original Orthodox St. Michael's Church, which
right.
was on 9th Street.
9th
correct?
Street, right.
9th Street. They're in the case back here, so we're going to just turn around and come over here. You can tell us a little bit about that.
Our original church was at 533 9th Street in Monessen. It was land donated by Michael Joseph, who was a member and a founder and a trustee at the church. And the church there, you can basically take that church and put it in our new church, and it would only take up maybe about 1/5 of the space we have in our new church. And when we would get 25 people in church, we had a crowd because that's how small it was. You get 25 in a church now, it's like, where is everybody? But these are the icons we had in our church. These were up on the iconostas, and the iconostas is the same as almost every Orthodox church in the country. You have a row on top of maybe 10, 15, 20 icons, and then you have the big icons on the iconostas on the doors and so forth. And but these are from the old church, and we still have all of them intact at our church. They're in the archives at our church at the present time. On the back wall, we have pictures of our bishops, our metropolitans, and so forth. This was Metropolitan Anthony Brashear. He was from 1935 to 1950, 1966, somewhere in that area. When he died off, then Philip Saliba became the Metropolitan. And Saliba was the Metropolitan until 2 months ago, and he died at the age of 83, 84. And we have a brand new Metropolitan, Archbishop Joseph, out of the Western California Archdiocese. He'll be officially ordained or
Installed. I don't know. I was thinking
not
installed
ordained,
is
installed or whatever
as
within the next 2-3 months in Syria, from what I understand. But it might be here in the United States. I have no idea where they're going.
we have a large picture of the old
Yes.
church back here.
This is a picture.
I don't know if we can.
This is a 1914, 1917
That is the
vi-
original.
picture of the church. That's the original church. To the right of that one is the patriarch. He has since deceased, and we have a new patriarch, Patriarch John. The little picture on top is that's our immediate bishop in our area, Charleston, Pittsburgh Archdiocese. That's Bishop Thomas. And on the far right is our favorite son from St. Michael's. That's Bishop Billy Essey. Oh, shame on you, George. That's Bishop
That's
Basil.
what he was known as, Billy.
He was one of my Boy Scouts. I've known him Billy, and it's hard to say Basil, Bishop Basil.
Well, let's move on and see the display we have about Bishop Basil.
Okay, Bishop Basil. Bishop Basil, born in the city of Monessen. He was the son of Genevieve, better known as Jinx Essey. She was a Loda, Genevieve Loda Essey. His dad was Bill Essey, and he is right now he has a sister Cheryl who lives in Roughdale, Pennsylvania, and a sister Heidi who lives at North Huntington, Pennsylvania. Bishop Basil graduated from California University. He has a lot of credentials with him. He became one of the favorite new upcoming priests when he was ordained, and everybody, wherever he's been at, people don't want to get rid of him. When he was in Kansas City, and they were talking about him going to another parish and so forth, that's when he was a priest. I mean, the people went in an uproar, and they fought, and they said, no, he stays here, and so forth. This is a picture of his sister Cheryl's. That's with Father Fred Fowler, our present pastor in time. This picture is of his grandparents and the family. Bishop Basil not in that picture. That's all the uncles and aunts. And out of that big family there, the only one left is Louise Essey, who's living in Montana right now with her son, who is a Catholic priest. So this is the Essey clan. This is the grandfather. We called him Slebe Essey. He served in World War I.
It's a wonderful photograph of him
Right
here.
right there.
Yes, with the flag and in his
Right.
World War I
Yeah.
uniform.
We had 4 people from our church serve in World War I. We lost one. It was a young boy. It was 2 days before the war was over, and he was unfortunately killed in the French in France and so forth. But out of the whole family, like I say, Louise is the only one left. I don't know where she would be on that picture. She might be that one here because she's the youngest one, and so forth. But Bishop Basil is well known throughout the world in Orthodoxy and in the Catholic faith. He has a big cathedral in Omaha, Kansas City, one of those two places.
The Antiochian village has played a
Big.
big part in the religious as well as recreational
Right.
Life of Syrian Americans in this part. So tell us a little bit about Antiochian Village, which is located not too far from Uniontown. Is that correct?
Well, it's closer to Monessen than it is Uniontown.
Oh, okay.
It's up in Ligonier.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's up in
I'm going in
Ligonier.
the wrong
Right,
direction.
Right.
Yeah, it's near Ligonier.
The Antiochian Village. Okay. This is a picture of Very Reverend John Namey, Father John. And before he became Father John, it was Norman Namey. He was a barber in Monongahela. He was also my trustee when I was president of the church in 1960. He was very, very faithful to the church and so forth. And he found this place up there. It was for sale by the, I believe it was the Methodist people. And he convinced the Metropolitan Philip to, purchase this land and let's make something out of it. So they did buy the land, and they made this Antiochian Village. It's a conference center. They have a big motel where you can stay overnight. They have a tremendous museum.
And people come from all over the country to learn
Right.
about painting icons, and they have I believe, a museum in there.
They have a museum.
Of
and
lovely,
they have a
beautiful
school for
icons.
iconography and so forth. And they have one of the best iconographers in the world that teaches that up there. The library is fully loaded with all kind of religious books, American books in Syrian and English and so forth. They have a display, as we showed a little while ago, of the headdresses and the outfits and all. They have a full display of those. And they have relics from the old country of most of the saints.
And they have a beautiful chapel there.
They have a chapel
where they hold
right,
services.
St. Ignatius Chapel. They hold service. They have a cemetery there. They moved the body of a couple metropolitans that are now, they've been transferred from Brooklyn to here. So this is really a historical site as well as a visiting site. Father John ran the whole place.
Is Father John buried there?
No,
he's not.
He's buried up at the monastery up in Elwood City.
Okay.
Yeah, and the center itself, like I said, conference center, hotel, motel, restaurant. They have a big cafeteria. They have instructional rooms. They have the schools. They have the library. And they're just expanding and so forth.
Yes, and it was all as a result of
one man.
Father John
Right.
encouraging.
And there have been a lot of,
Yes.
summertime, they have summer camp and all the students, kids from all over the United States come to this camp here. This is also used, the conference center is not only for Syrians or Orthodox. You have many Catholic or Protestant, Methodist, you name it. They have they go by the weeks up there,
Yes.
and they rent it out and so
Yes.
forth. And it's a gold mine.
So Father John was part of the Namey family, and one of, I think it's his sister, brought back from Syria. This is a family tree that it was actually made in Syria. You can't see the detail, but all these little leaves have written in Arabic. Names. It's a very curious piece and very, very interesting. But Joan Langan is Bishop or Father
John's sister.
Yes, Father John's sister, and she brought that back.
Don't ask me to read the names.
Okay, we won't. And there's also the Namey family. The original family that immigrated to the Mon Valley, and as you said, I think there were 4 sons and the dad, and they were barbers.
They're all barbers.
Barbers. I believe in Donora they may have had, or Charleroi, or both.
Mont City, mainly Mont City.
Mont City, but I think one of them was also at another place.
Yeah.
There was also, I guess they owned a confectionery store at one point.
Right.
And there's a picture here. And then we have, I guess, this is Father John.
That's when
He was elevated.
Right.
Yes, within the church. And then again, continuing down, these are more family pictures and events within Father John's family and the relatives. And I think you're in this picture, George.
These were during the 100th
Yes,
anniversary.
these colored ones are from the
Bishop
100th.
Joseph, and that's June, that's Father John's sister and cousin at the far end. And that's, I believe that's Paul from Bridgeville standing there.
Uh-huh.
And this is another sister. This is Jane, and that's Joan, and that's Carol. That's a niece or it's a cousin of Father John.
From the Navy family.
Right.
Well, we've really, I think, covered everything that's the highlights of the things that are in the museum. We haven't finished doing all of the little artifacts and the items that represent the culture in Syria. But we'd like to thank you, George. You did a fantastic job.
You're quite welcome. It's my pleasure.
Yes.
I didn't realize I remembered all that stuff.
Yes, it all came
Yeah.
when you needed it,
Right.
correct, and that's important. So thank you very much for coming today, and thank you for watching the video about the Syrian American exhibit here at the Monessen Historical Society. Come and visit us soon.
Don't miss it.